It started that night.
This is Mr. Black Terror, and you've just stepped into the darkest corner of the internet. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What hour of the night is it? And don't forget to share this video with anyone who laughs at horror stories. Let them hear what real fear sounds like. I served 8 years in the army before I ever heard a story that truly made me question reality. The kind that isn't passed around campfires or told by drunk vets trying to one-up each other. The one I'm about to tell you came from a man who never talked about Vietnam. His name was Sergeant David Rowan. I met him in 2019, when I transferred to a small VA clinic near Portland. He was 72 then, quiet, polite, a man whose eyes always seemed focused just past you. The first time he ever opened up to me was during a stormy afternoon. Rain hitting the clinic windows like static. I don't know what made him talk that day. Maybe it was the thunder. Maybe he just got tired of carrying the memory alone. He told me this. Back in May of 1969, his squad was deep in the Central Highlands, not far from the Cambodian border. 5 of them were scouting ahead of their unit when Rowan suddenly felt sick, dizzy, nauseous, his skin cold. His squad leader ordered him to rest under a thick cluster of palms while the others cleared a path. They walked maybe 40 yards ahead, and then Rowan heard a whisper behind him, not in Vietnamese, not English, not human. He turned, expecting to see another soldier, maybe someone from a nearby unit. Instead, Rowan said the jungle looked wrong, quieter, darker, like all the sound had been sucked out of the air. Even the insects had stopped chirping. He stood, trying to get his bearings, but something kept pulling his attention deeper into the trees, as if the shadows themselves were urging him to follow. He didn't remember making a decision. He just started walking. When he finally looked back, he couldn't see his squad anymore. He tried shouting. Nothing came out. His throat worked, but no sound left his mouth. The jungle kept drawing him forward. He told me he walked for maybe an hour before. He realized the light was fading fast. Though the sun had barely been overhead when he started, the sky was swallowed by a thick, unnatural fog. The air smelled like rust and wet copper. He felt watched, not by animals, but by something that didn't blink. When night came, he saw shapes moving between the trees. Not Viet Cong, not civilians. Shapes too tall, too thin, gliding instead of stepping. Their silhouettes flickered like broken film reels, as if they didn't fully exist in the same space he did. He kept walking because stopping felt worse. Then he found the shack. Just one rotting hut standing where no village should have been. No path, no clearing. Nothing but thick jungle pressed tight against its walls. Rowan told me he didn't want to enter, but his legs moved anyway, like he was being guided. Inside, he saw a table with 5 chairs, one for each member of his squad. He froze. On the table were the dog tags of his 4 teammates. And in the 5th spot, neatly placed, were his own. He reached for them, and the moment his fingers touched the metal, the jungle outside screamed. Not animals, the jungle itself. Trees creaked like bones snapping. Branches thrashed violently as if something enormous was pushing through them. The floor vibrated. The walls shook. Then he saw a figure standing in the corner. It wasn't a person. It was a silhouette shaped like a man, but wrong. Arms too long, head tilted as if studying him. Its body twitched in tiny, impossible jerks, never fully still. Rowan's voice finally returned, but only enough to whisper, What do you want? The thing tilted its head the opposite way, bone cracking loudly even though it had no visible bones. It spoke in his squad leader's voice. Stay. And then in another friend's voice. Stay with us. Then another. And another. All four voices layered over each other, echoing inside the tiny shack. Rowan bolted out the door, sprinting into the trees even though he couldn't see more than a foot ahead. He ran until he collapsed from exhaustion. When he woke, 3 men in uniform were dragging him toward an evac chopper. But here's where the story gets strange. They told him he'd been gone 3 days. 3 nights. His squad had been searching nonstop. They found no shack, no fog, no abnormal jungle. But when Rowan insisted on returning to the place he disappeared, they reluctantly agreed. The terrain had changed completely. Where the hut had been was nothing but untouched vegetation, except one thing. In the mud, half buried, Rowan found his dog tags, the same set that had been on the table. His squad insisted he must have dropped them before getting lost. But Rowan pointed out something they couldn't explain. The metal was warm, like someone had just been holding it. The army wrote it up as disorientation from dehydration or heat stroke. But Rowan knew what he'd seen. And he knew what had whispered to him in those woods. When he finished telling me his story that day in the VA clinic, the storm outside had grown louder. Rowan leaned in and said something I'll never forget. They didn't let me go. They just let me borrow myself back. I didn't know what he meant, and I didn't want to ask. But he clarified anyway. When I came back, I felt different. Like part of me stayed there, still sitting in that chair in the shack. And every time it rains like this, I hear them again. He tapped his ear, calling me by name. All 4 voices. As if they're still waiting at that table. A week later, Rowan missed his appointment. 3 days passed and still no word. I called his emergency contact. No answer. I drove to his apartment myself. The door was unlocked. Everything inside was neat. Nothing out of place. Except on his kitchen table were 5 chairs, 4 empty, and on the 5th, a pair of dog tags. His name, his blood type, his service number. Still warm. I filed a wellness report. Police opened an investigation. But the apartment's door camera showed nothing. No one going in or out for the 48 hours before I arrived. It was like Rowan vanished into thin air. A month later, during a heavy thunderstorm, I woke to a sound outside my window. A voice, 4 voices. Layered. Calling my name. Didn't open the blinds. I don't think I ever will, because some nights, when the rain is loud enough, I swear I can see a faint reflection in the glass. A tall, long-armed silhouette standing just behind me, head tilted, waiting for me to turn around. I never expected my clearance credentials to come back and haunt me after retirement. I spent 26 years inside places the government swears never existed. The last facility I was posted to, Site Echo 7, should have been demolished, sealed, and erased from every record. But it wasn't. And what happened there has been scratching at the edge of my mind for decades, refusing to fade. I'm telling this now because 2 weeks ago, I received a voicemail from a number that hasn't existed since 1964. A dry, metallic voice, repeating a phrase I heard on the worst night of my life. Control has failed. Subject is active. That phrase alone brought the smell of bleach, cold concrete, and burning insulation back to me. Echo-7 sat in the forests of northern Montana, near the Canadian border, one of those places where the cold feels ancient. It was built under the guise of a communications research lab, but the real work happened 4 floors down. By the winter of 1962, the world was choking on nuclear tension, and every agency wanted an advantage. Some turned to physics, some to chemistry. Echo-7 turned to consciousness. They drafted scientists from every corner: psychology, neurology, acoustic engineering, you name it. But the heart of the project was something called the isolation feedback experiment. The basic premise was simple: place a human subject in a sensory void chamber, feed controlled stimuli, record neurological changes. But that was just the paper version. The real objective, the one whispered in sealed conference rooms, was to use sensory deprivation to push the human mind past its natural boundaries, to force it open, to see what was on the other side. I was a young systems officer back then, monitoring electrical feeds, chamber controls, air pressure. I didn't understand half of what the researchers aimed to do, but I understood enough to know that the subject, a man named Private Ellis Ward, should never have been chosen. He had the look of someone permanently tired, eyes too sunken for his age, hands always trembling. They said he volunteered for classified duty, but the way he walked into the chamber the first night, it felt more like resignation than patriotism. The chamber itself was brutal. A soundproof, lightless cube suspended on shock absorbers, with feeds installed for microstimuli, short bursts of tones, low-frequency hums, subliminal whispers. The idea was to deprive him, then overfeed him, then deprive again. His mind was supposed to adapt, reorganize, reach some new threshold. They ran 72 hours of continuous sensory cycling. On the 3rd night, everything started going wrong. I was on monitor duty with 2 others, Sergeant Reeves and Technician Palmer. The room was silent except for the hum of machines. Ellis's vitals were steady, brain activity spiking now and then. Nothing unusual. Then, without warning, every line on every monitor jumped at once. His heart rate skyrocketed. His neural readings became erratic, not chaotic. Patterned, like a repeated shape, flashing again and again on the graph. Reeves leaned in. "You ever seen that before?" "No," I said. "Machine must be looping." But Palmer shook his head. "Machine isn't looping. His brain is." Before we could act, Ellis spoke through the intercom. He wasn't supposed to speak. He wasn't supposed to be awake. The chamber should have kept him in floating semi-consciousness, drifting in and out, but his voice came through clearly, calmly, almost conversational. "Something's in here with me." Reeves hit the override. "Ellis, the chamber is sealed. You're alone." "Not anymore." I wish I could say his tone was panicked. It wasn't. It was flat, like he was stating a fact. We activated the microlights inside the chamber. The screen remained blacked out. Reeves frowned. "Lights malfunctioning?" Palmer checked the board. "No, they're working. But the cameras aren't picking anything up." Then Ellis spoke again. "It's closer now." At that moment, every temperature gauge plunged. The hallway outside frosted over. My breath clouded in front of me. And then through the speakers we heard something that made my skin crawl. Not breathing, not whispering, mimicking, a low, distorted echo of Ellis's own voice, repeating the words he'd spoken minutes before, but stretched, broken, wrong. "Not anymore." Reeves shouted, "Shut it down. Open the chamber." We hit every emergency switch we could. Nothing responded. Something in the system had locked us out, Ellis began screaming. It wasn't fear, it was fury. Like he was fighting something we couldn't see. Then the chamber door, the one made of reinforced composite steel, began to bend outward, as if something inside was pushing against it. Metal buckled like wet cardboard. Palmer stumbled back. This is not possible, the screams. Stop. Silence. The door creaked back into place. Then it opened slowly on its own. A flood of freezing air hit us, so cold it burned. The chamber was pitch black. Flashing the emergency light inside did nothing. The darkness seemed thicker than it should have been. Heavy, alive. Reeves stepped forward first. Ellis, can you hear me? No answer. We entered as a group. The chamber smelled wrong, like wet soil and old copper. The air felt dense. My ears pressured like we were underwater. Ellis was sitting in the far corner, knees to chest, completely still. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. His skin looked gray. Reeves knelt next to him. Ellis? Talk to me. Ellis slowly turned his head, not toward Reeves, not toward any of us. He turned toward the darkest corner of the chamber and smiled, not a human smile. A stretched, unnatural grin that pulled too far at the cheeks. Then he whispered, but his voice wasn't his own. It contained layers, like several people speaking through him. It noticed you. The lights exploded. A blast of cold knocked us backward. I remember hitting the hallway floor. When I opened my eyes, alarms were blaring. Emergency lights flashed red. Ellis was gone, completely gone. What remained inside that chamber was a long streak on the wall, something like soot, something like ash, but shaped almost humanoid. The facility shut down within 48 hours. Files burned. Men reassigned. We were ordered never to speak of it. Official report: structural failure and fatal power malfunction. They never explained why the camera feed right before the lights blew showed a shape behind Ellis. Something tall. Something wrong. Something leaning close to him, as if whispering into his ear. I left the service 5 years later, changed in ways I never admitted to anyone. Nightmares, cold spots, the feeling of being watched. But none of it terrified me as much as the voicemail I got 2 weeks ago. The exact same metallic tone from Echo 7's long-dead intercom system. Control has failed. Subject is active. 3 days after the voicemail, I began hearing footsteps in my house at night. Slow, heavy, wet. My cat refuses to enter the hallway after sunset. Every mirror in the place fogs from the inside. And last night, as I walked past the living room in the dark, I heard breathing. Not mine. Lower, closer, then a whisper in Ellis's layered, broken voice. It noticed you. If this recording is found, do not try to help me. Do not search for Echo 7. Do not respond to any call, message, or voice claiming to be me. Because if I'm right, it's already using my voice. I used to believe that every strange wartime story had a logical explanation. Exhaustion, nerves, bad intel. War bends the mind in ways people back home will never understand. So when I transferred to the 5,307th Composite Unit in 1943, what people later called Merrill's Marauders, I assumed most of the jungle legends were just that. Soldiers talk. Fear has a voice. But after what happened near the Tanai River in northern Burma, I don't dismiss anything. Not anymore. We've been marching for days through terrain that felt more alive than the men walking through it. Trees dripped constantly. The soil clung to your boots like it wanted to pull you under. At night, The darkness moved every vine, every leaf, every shadow looked like it was breathing. Mosquitoes covered us like a second skin. The air smelled like rot, sweat, and gun oil. One evening, after a brutal 12-hour push, Captain Yates ordered us to camp along a slope overlooking a narrow ravine. The Japanese were somewhere to the east, maybe 2 miles, maybe 10, we were never sure. Everyone was running on instinct, caffeine tablets, and fear. My buddy Crowley, Irish kid from Boston, with a crooked grin, was on watch with me. We sat with our backs against a slick log, rifles resting across our laps. The jungle hummed so loud it felt mechanical. Cicadas, frogs, something else deeper, slower. Like a load churning under the earth. "Tell me we get out of this place alive," Crowley whispered. "I'll tell you when we're on the boat home," I muttered. He nodded. Then froze. A sound rose from the ravine. Not an animal. Not a person. Something long, broken, like a whistle dragged across metal. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the jungle noise like a knife. My spine locked up. Crowley's fingers tightened around his rifle. "Did you?" "Yeah," I said. Then we heard it again, closer this time. Not fast, but steady, deliberate, like something moving with intent. Something large. Crowley put a finger to his lips, eyes locked on the darkness between the trees. I followed his gaze. That's when we saw the glow. Faint at first, like the reflection of moonlight on water. But the moon wasn't out. It pulsed like a dying ember behind a cluster of bamboo. The light grew brighter, then dimmed, then brightened again. Each pulse seemed to follow a rhythm, almost like breathing. I whispered, "Flare?" Crowley shook his head. "Flares don't breathe, Jack." The glowing shape shifted. Not a static light, something emitting it. Something moving. I raised the alarm quietly, signaling 2 other men. They crawled over, squinting into the brush. One of them, Morales, swore under his breath. The glow moved again, stepping into a gap between the bamboo stalks. I saw legs first. Thin, too thin, like branches. They were bent backward, as if the joints weren't made right. The torso was long, impossibly narrow. The arms hung past its knees. But its head, I still don't know how to describe it properly. It was shaped like a teardrop, but wider at the top. The glow came from beneath the skin through veins that pulsed with an orange-red light. Like embers trapped under wax. It stopped there, swaying gently, facing us. Or I think facing us. I never saw eyes, just that head humming softly with heat. Morales raised his weapon. Crowley grabbed his arm. "Don't," he mouthed. The thing let out another sound, the same metallic whistle, but this time drawn out, almost mournful. The jungle fell silent. Completely silent. Even the insects stopped. Then it took a step toward us. We backed up instinctively, rifles pointed, breaths shallow. I expected a charge, an attack, gunfire, but instead, it dropped to its hands, if you could call them hands, and began scraping at the ground. Slow, deliberate movements. Like it was digging for something, or burying something. None of us moved. None of us blinked. After a minute, it stopped. Its glowing head turned slightly, listening. Then it rose back to its full height. It lifted one long bony arm toward us. The orange veins brightened, almost blinding. Then the jungle erupted. Gunshots from the far edge of camp. Men shouting. A flare streaked upward, lighting the canopy in harsh white. The thing jerked back from the sudden light like it had been struck. Its glow flickered wildly. It turned, and in one motion, impossibly fast, it disappeared into the ravine. moving with this unnatural liquid grace. Like it didn't feel gravity at all. Crowley and I exchanged looks. Not fear, pure disbelief. We rushed to camp. 2 soldiers were down. Japanese scouts had attacked, then retreated. But the weirdest part? One of the men who'd been hit, Dawson, swore he saw someone rushing past them in the dark. Only not a Japanese soldier. Taller, glowing, moving like smoke. We didn't tell anyone what we saw. Not the captain, not the medic, no one. Who would believe us? The next morning, Yates ordered us down toward the ravine. Recon, see if the Japanese had regrouped there. Overnight. Crowley caught my arm as we approached the spot where the thing had dug. The ground was disturbed, a shallow oval carved into the soil. Something had been buried there or removed. But the strangest part? A set of prints. Large, deep, but not quite human. 3 long toe-like impressions, a long central ridge, almost bird-like, but heavier. Much heavier. The prints led downhill, then stopped abruptly at a tree. No continuation. Nothing disturbed past that point. Like it vanished. We found no Japanese troops. No signs of movement. No path through the brush, but Crowley knelt near the base of that same tree and froze. In the moss was a smear of orange residue, faintly glowing, like dying coals. He touched it and hissed, "Hot." Still hot. We left the jungle 2 weeks later. Most men chalked up the weird stories to stress. Fever dreams, nerves, but Crowley wasn't the same. At night, he would wake up gasping, swearing he saw that glowing shape at the edge of camp again, watching, waiting. I tried to calm him but eventually gave up. Some nights I thought I saw it too. A year later, Crowley was killed in action during a night ambush. They said he ran forward without cover, like he wasn't thinking straight. Like he wasn't scared of bullets anymore. I still think about that thing. Sometimes I dream about it, how it swayed, how its skin glowed under the darkness, how it pressed its hand into the dirt like it was performing some ritual older than any war we were fighting. And sometimes, on very still nights, I swear I can hear that metallic whistle. Soft, distant, but unmistakable, like it followed me home, like it's still looking for whatever it buried or whatever it lost in that Burmese jungle. And maybe it thinks I know where it is.